So, cursing the moon. You may or may not have heard about all of this kind of baby witches cursing the moon, and I think it was like hexing the fae or something like that. I'm not going to get too involved with the whole TikTok thing. Rather than moan about how stupid people are, I thought that it might be a better idea to maybe discuss from a technical perspective about what is with hexing or cursing the moon and whether that would be even possible. So, for one, I'm not entirely sure why you would want to go about it. Um, what it is that you think the moon is exactly, because at the end of the day, it's a moon. Okay, there are kind of energies that are associated with the moon, such as gods or goddesses. Very often it's goddesses, but not all the time. Energy, spirits, that kind of thing. So I'm not entirely sure whether you're trying to curse or hex the moon, or whether these people are trying to hex the moon to get back at those energies. I'm not sure why that you would want to do that. When it comes to hexing a deity, or a particularly powerful spirit, generally not a good idea. Cursing, hexing, jinxing, that kind of a magical working is actually quite weak. Even if you put some oomph behind it, that's really not going to make much of an impact on a deity level. So you're never really going to curse or hex a deity. It's too easy for them to it's not really going to make an impact. There is absolutely no point in doing that. It's a kind of like throwing a tennis ball against the wall. The chances are it will probably bounce back and hit you in the face. Okay, if you did want to get back or destroy, say, a spirit or something like that, there are ways of doing it, but you'd never go and do a hex or a curse or something like that, because that type of magical practice is quite simple, and I'm not saying they can't be affected amongst practitioners, witches, that kind of thing, that don't have much knowledge, so it's a very basic kind of form of magic and very easy to defend against. But you're not going to do that sort of thing against a spirit or a deity. It's kind of pointless. You're really just asking for trouble at that point. In fact, I think it's kind of insulting even attempting to do something like that. But there we go. In terms of if you're thinking of the moon, because obviously the moon is something that people will use in spell work to fix energy too. So for example, moon phases is one of those things that certain people will incorporate into their spells. So if you've got a waning moon, for example, and you're using that as the moon looks or appears in the sky to be getting smaller, waning, getting smaller, you could do a spell such as one to get rid of something. Now, if you're trying to interfere with other people's magic, I don't know if this is what the attempt was, in order to kind of throw a spanner in the works and mess about with, the moon, because it's something that's used in spell work. So, for example, if you know someone that's doing a spell with the moon or works with the moon, then you might want to mess up that system, the lunar system. I don't know if that would be a reason why they were trying to do that, but even so, I don't know why you would take the approach of trying to hex the moon. Normally when you're hexing something, it's kind of like a magical punch in the face. Building, packaging up energy, programming it, and then releasing it, directing it specifically at a target. I don't really see what the point of doing that to the moon or even the sun. I think they said they were going to do it too. Really, what is the point of that? I don't really know. If you're wanting to get at someone, a practitioner that relies on a certain system, so for example, if I know a practitioner that relies on the lunar phases in order to make their spells work, then I probably wouldn't attack them from the perspective of trying to change the force in which they're using, although that's quite interesting and I kind of respect that to a certain extent. think about the moon as a tool. So if someone is reliant on a specific tool and then you come along and break that tool or mess it up, then, you know, okay, that might teach them a lesson. It might teach them not to be reliant on that tool. But also it's going to cause all sorts of problems for them, isn't it? I don't think, and I can't say I know because I'm not entirely sure why all of this happened. I think it's mainly just a case of very inexperienced practitioners that don't really know a lot are messing about with things to see what happens, presumably, unless the whole thing is literally just some kind of fake, but I'm not sure. Either way, I thought it would be more interesting to talk about the theory behind it. So rather than kind of calling out people for being idiots, it's a case of, so if you were to hex the moon, why would you do it? Or how would you do it? Or why wouldn't that work? Ultimately, hexing and cursing, you should be doing a hex or something like that if you're wanting to get back at someone, something essentially. Most likely it's going to be a corporeal being, so a physical being, so normally a person you're probably going to do that on, but that is quite weak magic. Essentially, the building, raising of energy, programming it, and then firing at someone, they can then take that, transmute it, and use it for their own. If they're a half-decent practitioner, they should be able to do that. So let alone something like the moon, or a deity associated with the moon, if that was really what you were going on after, there's not much point in doing that. Because if a human witch can transmute some energy, like a hex, then the chances are a deity can do that. We're not going to cover messing around with deities on this channel because I think that's probably a little bit irresponsible at this point. Although I'm not going to say we won't cover it in the future. But I mean, it's one of those things that's definitely going into intermediate practice. So, you know, maybe that's not really the sort of thing that we should be discussing on YouTube. I don't know. Depends what people want, I suppose, at the end of the day. But no, it's certainly an interesting one. I can't for the life of me think why you would want to do it. I know they wouldn't work out very well. And in terms of throwing a spanner in the works, I really don't see the point in that. One thing that's quite might be interesting to point out is the fact that obviously planets, that kind of thing, when you're talking about astrology as well, you're really talking about energies and forms and personifications of things that vary slightly from person to person. So what one person may think the moon rules, or the deities that they have associated with that, may be different to another. Now when you study magic enough, at least the magic that actually works, and not just kind of fantasy magic, like in Harry Potter and all that kind of crap, then you'll realise that actually they're all pretty much the same. Okay, the words may change, but magic is kind of universal. There's a lot of different iconography used in that, but ultimately there are certain, I wouldn't say laws, but there are principles at play that don't really change. So again, it's one of those things, isn't it? I mean, why would you even bother to do that? I'm going to spend the rest of the day thinking about why you would even bother to hex or curse the moon. But no, don't do that. Probably not such a good idea. Just stick to hexing people. And even then, if you hex a person and they're a half-decent practitioner, they should be able to fire that back at you and then some. Or just take the energy and use it. I mean, generally speaking, hexing and cursing is only really reliable. It's only really useful when working on or using it on mundane, so people that don't have much experience with magic, if any at all. Because again, your average magical practitioner, I'd like to think, would be able to do something about that. But I mean, I've been a professional witch for quite a few years now, and it does never cease to amaze me the amount of people that say have been practicing witchcraft for a long time and they can't seem to understand even the basic principles. Can't even to begin to even explain or make a spell work. So I don't know. It's one of those things, isn't it? But before I ramble on, I think we'll leave it there.